But how many people here are developers or developer adjacent or have like a CS background? Okay, you guys might be bored and the rest of you might be confused. So that's cool. So a little bit about me. I have a master's degree in cybersecurity. I spend most of my time reverse engineering software. Sometimes I mod games, but mostly I reverse engineer software. My friends are here. Hello, friends. I love you, friends. Hello. Come up here. Come up here. Come up here. I love you. Come here. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, let me... I don't think I have any control over the volume. How do I turn the volume up? I'm not an AV guy. Hi. Okay. So you can download my presentation here off my website, and I also have some example code. And it's not malware, I promise you. It's probably not malware. Probably. Yeah. It's just a blog post that links to GitHub, so I promise you it's not malware. And I'll put this back up like later. But I made like 2 very basic Godot projects to sort of like explain how some of this stuff works. And then a preface for this is that, some of the tools I talk about you might be able to use for piracy. I don't condone piracy, so don't do that or something. Also, don't make malicious mods and put them on any mod store. That's like a dick move. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to curse. Just don't do that. So why do we want to mod? My favorite reason is to create accessibility tools. I think that is like the number one reason to mod anything. Mostly because it's like the bottom of the barrel priority for most dev teams because it doesn't make any money. So the community has to sort of pick up the slack. Translation packs, that's another big one. Asset packs, and you get it. Quality of life and bug fixes, Skyrim. And fan content, which would mostly be like your ROM hacks, I guess. There's like 10,000 different like ROM hacked Pokemon games out there. I haven't played all of them yet though. So there's a lot of barriers to modding, and we'll get through this like soft stuff soon. There's like legal issues, terms of service, end user license agreements, a bunch of other like bureaucratic stuff that says, hey, if you mod our game, we'll ban you, which is, terrible. Other modders, either maliciously or unmaliciously, they might push mods that conflict with your mods and, brick them because they either don't like you or they don't care what you're making. And then my favorite is hostile developer teams, where they'll implement code obfuscations to prevent users from modding their game or implement DRM and anti-cheat systems, which I'm not a huge fan of for obvious reasons. Sometimes they'll also push, really petty fixes, that nuisance push fixes that break your mod just to, stick it to the modders. There's a general method to modding any kind of software, starting with like identifying the tech stack of the thing that you're trying to mod. So for a lot of games that appreciate modders, they might make their dev pipeline public. I can't really name a bunch of them off the top of my head though, but they'll maybe open source their existing tooling that they use to make the game so you can mod the game. Then you have to identify if there's any DRM, anti-cheat obfuscation. Again, it's a really big one. I won't really go over how to get around those. Then you have to start reverse engineering the game somewhat if they don't make any of their tooling public. This is probably like the hardest part and takes the longest amount of time. And then you have to start like the tedious task of making a mod loader if one doesn't already exist. So you have to figure out how to hook existing functionality in the game and then sort of work around it, right? And we'll go over that in a moment. And then the actual mod development starts after you develop the mod loader. So let's talk about like hooking and intercepting. So this is a weird technical thing. So your game might want to, well, any game or any program might want to load some kind of asset, right? And what we want to do is we want to write code that when the game calls the thing it wants, catches that call, right? And then our code will execute and then execute the code that the game actually wants, right? And it sort of works like a black box. The game is unaware that it's calling foreign code. And we can write code that changes the inputs to the code that exists in the game, or we can modify the outputs from the code that the game normally would want to run. This is a technique that malware also uses, very common in different kind of like dynamic link library like exploits, right? Where a lot of this, comes from malware, but where the system or the game will call a function, a low-level function called load library, where it will load that DLL or resource pack or whatever, and basically that's just a pointer to a function call or function calls in that library, and then it has offsets where the rest of those functions are. What we want to do is we want to catch that, right? And say, hey, actually load this code, run this, and then run the thing that you want to run. That's basically what a mod loader does kind of under the hood. So let's talk a little bit about the Godot engine. I don't know why they call it. Does anyone know why they call it Godot and not Godot? Yeah. If my day couldn't get any worse. So you can tell that it's really popular. 9% in it shares it with Game Maker. That's rough. But it's produced some like really unique games. If you know these, they're fun. If you don't know these, I want to gatekeep them a little bit. But they are fun. Sorry. So a quick Godot crash course. The engine itself is designed to be very extendable, and it's open source. Yeah, right. They've tried to make it as easy as possible to build DLC patches and bug fixes that you can deploy to your game that already exists. And the easiest way to do this is either using the pack file system or the DLL file system. So all of your, when you make your game and you build it, basically all of your resources either go into these two things. Normally, everything goes into pack. So your scenes, your scripts, your assets, everything. If you're using C# because you hate yourself, it all goes into a DLL, and that's mostly, I think, the C# runtime, right? So when we were talking about hooking before, those are the two things that we will probably want to target when we're building our mod loader, right? And the good thing about these things is that they're loaded at runtime. And the amazing thing about pack files, and by extension like zip files, is when you load them into your game, if you structure the file system correctly in that zip file, it will unfold and replace assets that already exist in your game when you load it, which makes making like things like asset swaps and translation packs super easy, right? Otherwise, you have to do like some messy stuff, and we'll go into the technicals of that when we explore an existing mod loader system that exists for Godot. So nodes and scenes, everything in Godot is made up with nodes and scenes, and I apologize. I was screaming a lot last night at the Proto-Min, so my voice hurts so much. So nodes are the individual game components, and they have life cycle and hooks, right? So they're created, they're destroyed, they do actions and events and all that cool stuff. And there's many different nodes, right? You have your rigid body collision system, you have sprites, you have meshes, all of its nodes, and they all kind of stack like that, right? And each node you can attach scripts to, GD scripts, which allows you to catch events and manipulate those nodes. Scenes are collections of nodes, right? Pretty similar concept to what you'd find in Unity. I don't know about Unreal because I don't have Unreal money. Where's Salad at? Does he know about Unreal? I'll ask him later. And like I said before, scripts control the nodes within a scene and how they interact with each other. So we're going to talk about an already existing mod loader called Godot Mod Loader, which is also open source. Because Godot is an open source engine, it's very easy to build something like this around it, which makes a lot of companies really mad because it does make games a little easier to pirate, unfortunately. But let's explore how this thing works. But first, let's talk about the benefits of a mod loader and why you want to waste a lot of time actually developing something like this. It will realistically be the first mod that you make if one doesn't already exist. And what it provides you is sort of a uniform API for hooking events within the game, which is a good thing to have. This one just happens to be open source, so you know how everything works and the documentation is really good. It also provides a good mechanism for mod distribution. So it separates the mod from the vanilla game code. And the reason why we want that is if you bake your mod into the game, if you ever want to distribute that mod, you have to also distribute the game, which makes devs really mad, like really, really mad. And it allows the end user to manage mods from different authors, especially if there's any sort of like conflict with those mods. They can pull a mod out or in as needed. And the mod loader itself separates these concerns with loading and injection. So the only thing the mod loader needs to do is load mods from disk and then inject them in the game so they can start hooking the assets that they need to change. And the assets, the mods themselves don't have to worry about that kind of thing. Ooh. So Godot Mod Loader, it has a self-setup script for games that don't already support mods, which is really cool. So you can just start running with it really fast, I guess. It does the injection and mod loading. That's all it does, really. So something really interesting about all Godot games, if you call them from the command line, like their terminal application, they accept this script flag that allows you to run arbitrary GD scripts against the game, which, well, allows you to modify the game as it's running. So that's how this script right here, flag add-ons mod loader setup.gd, when you run your go.game and you want to install the mod loader into the game, that just picks up that install script and runs it with the game. And we're going to look at what that install script does. This is what it does. This is what it actually does. It calls this command right here. So this calls another open source tool called GDRE, which is a Godot reverse engineering tool that just basically unpacks pack files. You remember the file that contains all, the stuff that the game needs to be a game. And what it does is it creates a new pack file that calls the old pack file. See, it does the intercepting. And it does that in a strange way by injecting this thing called a project binary, a custom project binary. We'll look into what that is in a second. And this class cache CFG configuration file. So it opens up that pack file and it sort of sets itself in the middle of like the actual vanilla game files, right? So all of our modding is going to go into this new pack file. Also, GDRE is a really cool tool. It looks like this. We can call it in GUI version and start using it ourselves to explore what it's doing. So this is the project binary file, and it basically contains a lot of configuration for how the game works. Sorry. And we can see that it adds these two new things under this auto load section right here, mod loader store and mod loader. And we'll talk about what auto loads are in a second because they're a very interesting feature of Godot. Basically what that does is, does everyone, the developers in here, do you know what a singleton is? Okay, yeah, well this makes a global singleton, and the funny thing about auto-loaded global singletons is that they're loaded before literally everything else in the game. So that's where we put our mod loader, and it gives it an opportunity to pick up those scenes before they load so we can change them. Very cool. Yes. Yeah, and this is basically what the mod loader does right here. So this is a copy and paste from the mod loader script, and we can see that it's pulling these, the mods for Godot using this mod loader are distributed with zip files. So this pulls those zip files off the disk and starts injecting them and doing the hooking and all the stuff for them to get them to run correctly. And if they fail, it throws like errors. So I didn't have a lot of time to write a game because I have a day job and writing games is kind of hard. So you get slop. So this is your game. You're a block and you fall, and that block comes and it hits you if you don't move out of the way, and you die like an isekai bus. That's kind of like the vision I had. And when we build this, it produces two files. It produces our pack file, which contains all of the code in the actual game, right? And then we have the actual application, which is basically all of the stuff the engine needs to run. So logically, the build is separated in two different components: actual game content and like Godot Engine, and or Godot if you're French. If we were using C#, this would produce another file, a DLL file, which would contain the C# runtime, I think, and some other stuff. I don't know, I don't use C#. Something really quirky about this engine too is although it supports C#, which I presume is to attract a lot of people from Unity, a lot of the documentation seems to be allergic to providing examples on how to use it. So most people, it's kind of an edge case for reverse engineering, so I didn't really put any thought into making an example for that. I'm sorry, C# people. So we want to install, I'm sorry. So if we open up the game in GDRE, we can immediately see all of the assets and structure for the game in that pack file, and we can start exploring that, right? So we can see where it's storing our textures and our scenes and our scripts. Whoops. And if you remember, our player character is just a big black box because I'm lazy, and that is stored right there as a compressed texture. So right off the bat, reverse engineering is very easy with this tool because all of our assets are very easily unpackable, right? Obfuscation is very antithetical to the design philosophy of this engine, so you probably won't run into a lot of games that employ, obfuscation tactics. I say that and then, just wait a couple of years when business people ruin it. But there are some techniques that already exist, like pack pack encryption, where you can set encryption for these packages. But the encryption key is just stored in the executable, so you can just pull that and then decrypt the package. So it's not like a really good, I mean, if there's obvious like barriers to modding that kind of show like, hey, the devs don't want me to mod this game, I would suggest finding a different game to mod, because you're going to be at war with these people until the day they run out of money or you die. It's not worth it. Anyways, we recover all of those files with GDRE, and we open up the engine, and we can see that we can completely recover the project, right? And it runs in debug mode. So that's cool, right? Immediately recover project recovery, super easy with that tool. And we have a working project. We could start modding with this, like building our mod in here right now. But again, we run into that mod loading problem where we want to build a mod loader, right? So we're not building our mods in an unpackageable state. We can also see, because GD script isn't a compiled language, we don't lose any information in the project. So we have one-to-one like code recovery, right? Which is pretty cool. So we get all of the comments, we get all of the names, everything is literally the same. You will not get that with C#, because C# does something called, am I out of time? They're looking at me funny. Okay. Oh, there's one right here up front. Where was I? I was rattling on about C#. So C# is a lot like Java in the sense that it has a virtual machine, and it does something called bytecode compiling, where it's not quite compiled, but it produces this weird intermediary thing called IL, which runs in a virtual machine, which makes it arguably faster than a scripting language. But the problem with that is when you recover that C# code from IL, or it's pseudo like assembly code, you will lose a lot of information because that information is stripped during the compilation process. So you will not be able to recover a lot of that stuff with this tool. You'll have to use, well, good luck. I don't know. That you'll have to use time. It's mostly a time problem, reverse engineering. So we can start building a mod. So we use a tool called Mod Tool, which comes with the mod loader to sort of scaffold out our mod. And then once the mod is built, we can run the game, and we see that the mod is loaded. Yeah, it does throw some errors, but those errors are mostly, it's looking for where the mod would be in production, and it's not finding it, and it's getting mad, but this is a dev environment, so I don't really care about that. But yeah, you can see your mods would normally go in this folder, mods is a zip file, but you can put them uncompressed in a different folder for development purposes, and we can see that it is picked up by the mod loader. So I drew a little goblin to replace the black box really quick in MS Paint, because I aspire to be the next pirate software. I bet. So we can see this is a mod, and the only thing this mod does is it looks to extend the player's scene. So it hooks that scene that has all of the good player stuff in it, like textures. And then it calls this function right here, change player, when the scene is loaded. And what that does is it looks for this node player sprite, and then it pulls a new texture from my mod and then replaces the old texture with that. There's a better way to do that, like I explained before, by loading a zip file with the same structure as the vanilla game, and it will automatically replace that old file. But I wanted to show how that hooking works. And it's an ugly goblin. And we can see, I kind of like him. We can see that after everything is built, we have a new folder, add-ons, which contains the mod loader and the installation scripts, right? And we have a second folder called mods, which is where our actual mod files go. Then we have the application binary, and then we have our modded pack file, which calls our vanilla pack file that contains like, the unchanged game, right? So this satisfies all of our concerns with like mod distribution. I think that's that's pretty much everything. So how much time do I have left? I could probably talk about this a little bit. I have a lot of time left. Yeah, I thought I only have like 40 minutes of like content. How many of you are familiar with like reverse engineering like at all? Okay, so a couple of you, cool. You can use a tool called IL-Spy, an intermediary language spy or whatever, to sort of pull apart C# files and try to recover code that way. Your mileage may vary. Again, I don't have a lot of experience with C# in Godot. Yeah.
So, can the Godot mod loader hook into other engines, like games built on Unity or other?
No.
So you have to reverse engineer.
Yes, yeah. So, for example, if you were looking to reverse engineer games in Unity, which predominantly uses C#, that would probably be your best friend. But there's a lot of pre-existing mod loaders for Unity that exists, like Melon Loader, I believe, which is pretty good. Yeah.
So the thing about Unity C# is that it's not normal C#.
It's a domain-specific language, yeah.
Their own things.
Yeah. But I might be wrong about this, but it still calls the Microsoft C# redistributable like DLL, right? Or does it do something else? It's literally its own thing. It's Mono, right? I think it's called.
Yes.
Yeah, Mono. Yeah. I'm not super familiar with it. I'm slightly familiar with it through like nerd osmosis. But I see you back there. C# developers. No, you do. Yeah. Again, pack files can be encrypted, and if you're modding a game and you see some of these like obfuscation techniques, I don't like saying like give up. That's not. I'm saying don't get in trouble, because it's really not. Just play better games. Like, I just play better games. I don't know. It's very easy to like get lost in the sauce when trying to like de-obfuscate some of these things, and it definitely goes against like their TOS at that point, because if they're going through the trouble to like spend money on like obfuscation engines, like I don't know, like bbyte or whatever people use, they're going to create policies that punish you for doing so. So it's just really not like worth it, I guess. Another thing I kind of wanted to address is to be careful where you get mods, especially for like the Godot mod loader. So whenever you run a mod through the Godot mod loader, you're running that mod with the same permissions as your user. So if you just download a mod and then load it into your game, you're just running arbitrary code from it could be malware, right? So that is a problem I'm not sure how they anticipate to address, and that's been a historical problem with a lot of mods, right? So that's another thing to keep in mind. When you're developing your mod, try to be conscientious that you basically have control over someone else's computer and don't do dumb stuff like delete files off their operating system, because it usually makes them really mad when you do that. Or like install crypto lockers or whatever. But also be careful when you're like downloading stuff to test other people's mods. You know, the classic try my game scam. And I think that's all of the contents. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, you.
Loader, you mentioned that it has that terminal script loader. How have you seen that can be turned off by the devs? Or is that just permanently on?
I think that's permanently on. I think you can turn it off, but I've never seen anyone turn it off. Yes.
What is the first game that you modded, and which one do you spend the most time modding?
You're not going to like this, but it wasn't a Godot game. It was actually Inscription. So that was the first game that I probably modded. And I mostly mod for myself. And I play kind of like the same 3 games, like Rain World, Deep Rock Galactic, and what else? Divinity. I play like Divinity. Those are like the 3 games I play. Those are my special interests. And then random things off of itch.io, because I have bad taste. Another really interesting thing I failed to mention about like Godot is a lot of people use it to make like just straight up applications, not necessarily games. I've seen a lot of material making like applications, but as it turns out, having like a render engine, a physics engine is like really cool if you need it for like scientific modeling purposes. So sometimes you'll see like really weird academic programs created and stuff like this.
Me and my friend were trying to mod a really old game, like a PS3 game, Digimon World 4, and the things that you were talking about seemed like more about changing assets, where we just want to change the EXP curve and then get rid of the terrible loading screens because they're so bad. Is this the way to do it, or should I be exploring other assets?
It's not written in Godot. But a lot of these concepts are applicable to that, right? So yeah, you could, that is a thing that you could do, but it also, if the developers of that game weren't very good and the code is super spaghetti, that will negatively impact your modding experience, right? So keep that in mind. But yeah, the concepts are applicable, yes. You would want to try to catch the functions that are calling those values and then prevent them from being changed, or write code that anticipates what the game wants to change it to and then change it to something else, right? So you're basically creating a black box around like game functionality. The game doesn't really care what's in that box. It only cares what goes in and what comes out. And so you're encapsulating the actual game logic. So you would need to write something to do that. I'm not super familiar with PlayStation, I'm sorry. But yeah,
You said you have a cybersecurity background.
yes,
Um,
sadly.
I also. How has that kind of informed your modding and that kind of thing? Because it's almost like you're, in a way, playing the attacker in a cybersecurity kind of setting when you are modding.
Isn't that like so weird?
Yes.
Modding is a kind of hacking. I'm just gonna like be very blunt about that, and that's an uncomfortable thing that some companies don't like, is that you're technically hacking their game. So by reverse engineering their game, you are not necessarily stealing their intellectual property, but you are now privy to things that they had no intention for you to ever see, right? And there is a very long history in software, like modding, like the wares community and everything like that. So the modding scene is kind of like derivative of that wares community. I don't know if that like answers the question.
I also wanted to know, like, how has your cybersecurity background informed your modding kind of practices? Like, from what
I've done a lot of like academic research, so I talk a little bit like an academic, but the way I sort of like approach problems like this is very blunt force, unfortunately. So I don't like solve problems very gracefully because I mean, like I have like an embedded systems like background, right, in like aviation, on top of like cybersecurity. So every problem I approach is like very blunt. It's the way I see it is like hacking is in the same way as modding is that I want to make this thing do something else, right? That's just kind of how I view it. I don't know if that answers the question either. Yeah. So it's like I have a product that I bought with my money and it doesn't fit my needs, and there's no rules against making it do something else that will make some businessman mad at me. So I'm just going to make it do that thing. And it's, you know, and you see that kind of attitude in a lot of different like not software modding communities, like amateur radio or circuit benders or whatever. I really, you know, like that scene too, where you take like old toys and make them into funny musical instruments. But yeah, I think it's more of an attitude.
So I wanted to ask a little bit more about code obfuscation and what that looks like.
Oh boy.
It's sort of like a spectrum where we've got developers who are very pro modding, they give out the modding tools, they kind of build their game with that in mind. We've got sort of neutral where they weren't really thinking about it, they're also not against it. So like in that way the code is kind of obfuscated because you got to figure out how to unpack it. They're not going to help you, but they're not going to hinder. I'm wondering, what are some examples of like active obfuscation that you find beyond just
This is purely a research like question, right? And you're not gonna like purely from the standpoint of like research. I think the three main, I guess four main kinds of obfuscation that I've seen, not necessarily in like games or software, but in malware and then adopted by software because they use the same techniques, is virtualization, where they'll build their own like pseudo virtual environment and they'll sort of like emulate their own game in this weird sandbox. And that makes it very hard to reverse engineer the game or software because it's a bespoke like architecture that's made up and doesn't exist, right? So it's taking your like x86 infrastructure and then running it on top of this like weird made up like emulator thing, right? And then it converts it back into like x86 because it has to run on your hardware. And it's like complete spaghetti. There's also like dead code where they'll just fill the game full of like these dead ends that you'll waste a lot of time trying to figure out what this code does, only to find out it does nothing. I think the technical name for that is opaque predicates, which are these big, long like logic problems, and they branch the code out in like all kinds of directions, and you have to find out the right execution path. That's a kind of something called control flow obfuscation. And then you have a lot of like classic anti-debugger techniques where they will try to detect if you've attached a debugger to the software, and if they find that the software is under debug, it will boot the software, it'll crash the software. And an interesting thing about debuggers is that when you are, the easiest way to defeat obfuscations is to run a program through a debugger and then do some action and then see the assembly code that's dumped from that action, right? Because it will bypass all of like the random nonsense that they've created to sort of like throw you off like the trail, right? But if they're employing anti-debugging techniques, it makes it very difficult to do that kind of runtime analysis. Yes, but I won't say which ones because I want to publish another paper. That's serious. I really do want to publish another paper. But it's kind of common. not just like in mods, but like in package management. If you go to like npm, like the Java or JavaScript package like repository, and just browse long enough, you'll find a lot of malware. And sometimes it's something. My favorite is called like a rug pull, where the malware does something legitimate, and then like a couple of days later, it does something really, really bad, and then it goes back to being legitimate, and it just it's confusing.
So on that note, if is there any patterns you've noticed so that we can watch out for those?
No, just don't install random stuff and run it on your computer. So I don't want to say like get good, but if you're experimenting with stuff and you're highly technical, like as I showed the tools, taking them apart. When you have a tool, I suggest exploring how it really works and understanding it at a deep level, not just to make sure it's not malicious, but so you can understand the limitations of that tool as well, right? Yeah. You can also, there's like known bad actors too that sort of like spam stuff like this on like marketplaces, but it's kind of hard to catch, right? Because they go under different names. But a lot of it comes from like the same 3 places, but I won't name where. It's just very aggressive. You could get really into malware analysis and make a lot of money. I will throw that out there. This has kind of gone off the rails. I thought you guys liked video games.
Okay, so since we've gone off the rails, I noticed you have a framework, but you have not installed Linux. Why?
Well, because most of the bad stuff is made for Windows, but if I run VMware on this, I also have you're making a lot of assumptions that I have one computer. I have 7 of them. I have a cabinet. This is one slab framework that goes in a cabinet of slab frameworks. Okay? I have more than one. Sometimes you have to run Windows. I mean, my Steam Deck runs SteamOS. That's good enough, right? That's where I play most of my video games. Oh, and another interesting thing about Godot is it supports Linux development. Yay! As well as Windows. Yeah. So you can natively build your games and mods, and they'll just run against, they're platform agnostic, I believe. So whether the game is built for Windows or Linux, I believe it would work. Don't quote me on that, because I don't play a lot of games on raw Linux. Again, I use SteamOS. They're not paying me. I just really like it. Any more questions?
Not a question, but you said you were going to throw the link out to your blog post.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. We're going to go back. This is actually a PDF. We're going back in time. There we go. Yeah. And so the PDF for this is, there's a link on my blog post to my GitHub, and there is a project that's unmodded and then the modded project. And you can run that in Godot 4.3. Don't run it in 4.5. It doesn't work. I tried it. Sorry. I take a really long time to update. I'm still running like Blender 3, I think, or something. Like, I'm a wild guy. But it will not run with newer versions of Godot. I'm sorry. I don't know why. I haven't figured it out yet. But the modded, you can see how the mod works and how the mod loader works through those projects. And I have 2 builds for the modded and unmodded. And then the PDF is there too.
Would you say that the Godot mod loader that they already have is a good reference if you wanted to create your own mod loader for a different engine?
yesn't, because I mean the concepts are going to be very, very like the same, right? But the way that engines do things individually is going to be very different. The challenge with Godot, from what I could tell reading some of their like issues and blog posts that they made about their mod loader, is that they were finding it very difficult to hook the game and load the mods in at the appropriate time before everything loads in, until they arrived at using auto loading to do that, right? The way that you do that is going to be different in engine specific and even application specific. Some applications like this is really funny. Going back to the load library thing with like applications when it looks for like a DLL file that it needs, depending on how old the application is, it might look literally everywhere for it. So you can just dump, if you figure out like sort of the paths that it's looking at, you can dump your own DLL there, and that's called path hijacking, and you can mod software that way or write really bad malware. Don't do that. Don't. But if you're really lucky and you analyze the application, you can sort of figure out if that DLL is being loaded very early in the program, and then start modifying where the program is looking for like other DLLs or like what it's trying to, what functions it's trying to call, that kind of thing. So again, that's going to be very application specific.
Is the Godot mod loader something that was sort of made by someone that has worked on the engine itself, or is it something completely separate?
I have no idea, but I imagine it was just someone with a lot of time on their hands. Sorry. I'm kind of curious about that now myself, because the Godot like development philosophy seems to be as open as possible, right? So it wouldn't surprise me if a longtime contributor to the engine, which is open source, decided to make a mod loader. But as far as I can tell, they're not directly affiliated. I'm probably going to get a lot of angry emails from them saying, yes, we are, or something. Any other questions? Oh.
In your experience, what's the most interesting thing you found with looking into a mod and like reverse engineering it? What's the most surprising thing?
I don't know how to answer that question. I'm sorry. Yeah. I think my definition of like interesting wouldn't be, I mean, I really like seeing how people solve problems, and everyone seems to solve technical issues like slightly differently. Yeah.
When you said it makes the one-to-one code, does it keep the comments?
Yes. Yeah. So, how familiar are you with how compilers work? Medium? Okay. So, I don't know how to summarize it because it's kind of complex, but it's not really complex. But essentially, it takes something like, say, C, right? Let's just say C, the universal, like, terrible language. There's other bad languages too. And it translates that into something kind of like a syntax tree, right? Which is an intermediary step that sort of shows, like, I guess, the operations of what the program is supposed to do. I'm describing it very poorly. But the next step is to sort of translate that into assembly. And there's a lot of like steps in between that. So you lose things like comments, variable names, etc., because the compiler doesn't care about those because they don't actually do anything. So those are stripped out of the compilation like process, and you cannot recover them going backwards, right? Because they have been lost. You can recover things like strings. So something that I really like when doing reverse engineering is looking for exception handling code. So anything that throws an error and has very verbose like strings, it's like, oh, now I know what this function kind of does, and I can start backtracking and figuring out what everything adjacent to it does. There's ways to strip that stuff out of a binary, but nothing is ever perfect. But the way to handle that, I guess, is to do something called symbol stripping, where you're stripping out those symbols. I have 10 minutes left. Any other questions?
You said you started modding with Inscription?
Yeah, well, that for games. I modded software before that.
But like, what caused you to pick up modding for Inscription? Like, what was the thing you wanted to change?
I really liked the first part of the game, but I didn't like the rest of the game. And I'm going to be real, I'm on the spectrum, and I really didn't like the rest of the game. And it was very stressful for me, so I just wanted to play the first part of the game over and over. It was very good. That last part made me so mad.
I never finished the game. I got to the last part, because this is too different.
I like Devolver Digital, so I'm obligated for you to like say, buy and play their games because, I want them to keep making games. Man, I really didn't like the end of that. Oh, play a different game like Look Outside. That's a good game. I like that one. Yeah.
What sort of software modding have you done?
I'm trying to think of something really cool, but none of it's like really cool. I draw a lot in MS Paint, as my friends in the audience can probably tell you. I draw a lot of shitposts. And original MS Paint didn't have a lot of like good functionality like layers or anything. New MS Paint does. So I attempted to add some of those like creature comforts because I did not like using GIMP. And Photoshop was like beating myself up with a brick. And when I was a teenager, I couldn't afford Paint Tool Psi, and I didn't want to pirate it either because that seemed mean. So I modded MS Paint. Like I said, I'm a little on the spectrum. It's such a dumb thing to do in retrospect. Yeah, if it works, it works. The new MS Paint's really good, though. I like it a lot. Now I just gotta I don't know if it's against like the EULA or whatever, but if it isn't, I might try to mod all the Copilot stuff out of it.
Yeah. Oh, there's scripts on GitHub that you got already.
Hell yeah.
There's actually a website, privacy.sexy. It generates a script for you.
Nice.
It's not. It's all open source.
We'll see. I don't have a lot of time left before they kick me out. I'm also not really, I don't want to say this in case my employer ever sees this, but I'm not super good at what I do. So if any of it was most of it was right, but I think some of it was a little wrong. I'm also really bad at explaining stuff. I apologize. But yeah.
What's a mod you've encountered that has taken the game the furthest away from the unmodded version?
Have you ever played Skyrim? Some of those mods are really gross. I don't think I'm allowed to talk about that, though, because this has to be PG-13, but I can tell you know what I'm talking about. The Skyrim modding community is kind of scary and frightening to me, so I've stayed very far away from it. I like Rain World mods, though. They're usually wholesome. Yeah. But anything that has to do with Skyrim is very cursed. Thank you, Todd Howard. I like a couple of different things. I like Vim, but I also use VS Code because I have a job. So I have to, but if I'm in a server environment or something, I'm not gonna use Emacs because I have a job, and it takes you start writing like configuration files for Emacs and time flies, man. Like, is not a productive use of my time. But I like them.
Opinions on Nano. There we go.
None of these things have to do with games. 5 minutes left, yeah.
How much of the base code would need to remain for a mod? Like example, Fallout London. It's a mod of Fallout 4, but it's a whole different game.
So, I mean, ideally, your mod shouldn't contain any of the base code, right? To make it easier to distribute. But you could just... Have you ever played like Doom or any of the mods people have made for Doom? It's just a different game. Like, and that's essentially a lot of cases like what ROM hacks are, right? Where the idea of like the original game is there, but you're basically just reusing logic that they've already written and you're repurposing it or writing your own logic on top of it. But like you could just write any mod that, you know, replaces like the base game. The immediate problem I guess I see with that is like optimization issues, right? Because the game is going to do stuff and you're going to make it not do that stuff, and that's a lot of wasted instructions on the game's part, right? So worst case scenario, you're like running every instruction like twice, thrice, or more. So you should be conscientious of like how much bloat your mod adds. If you're just gonna rewrite the game, just make a new game, but maybe that's a bad opinion, I don't know. This guy seems like he has a lot of opinions. Yeah. I'm very thirsty. I was in the makerspace doing like the expert like solder challenge like buzzer board thing, and all of the pieces were itty bitty, and I huffed a whole bunch of like solder smoke accidentally, and now I'm really thirsty, and I think that's a bad sign. I feel like a wilted plant. I need more of that magic smoke. Yeah. Any more questions that don't seem to be about like modding? Yeah. Oh, I lost my water bottle. Oh yeah, they give panelist water bottles. Whoops, I'll take a couple of those on my way out. Yeah.
So if you had an unlimited amount of time to make the mod of your dreams, what mod would you make?
I would probably just make my own game. For me, I think it's more of like a quality of life thing, like creature comforts. I don't really want to add like content to an existing game. Maybe that's like dumb, but I feel like it kind of bad opinion time. I think it ruins like the artistic direction of the original game. Even if it's like a bad game, I want to play the game the way that it was like intended to play. But if the game is like impossible to play because it's like has some like annoying thing, like I can't sprint, or like it just rubs my brain the wrong way, like I'd want to add like something that makes the game more playable for me, right? But I don't really want to add like content. I'm still so thirsty. Any more questions? Are we out of time? That doesn't help me. That actually makes it worse. That makes it worse. Rishi, fetch me some water. I'm parched. I love friends who sit up in the front row to give me water. Any more questions? Again, there's probably more qualified people to talk about this sort of thing. I like to pride myself, even though like like I'm an academic and I've like published stuff, I still feel like a hobbyist and really dumb, which is like the most magical feeling. Yeah.
Did you make the demo that you made to show us in the slides? Did you make that while wearing coding socks or no coding socks?
Well, I'm like 32 now, so I don't wear coding socks anymore. I like once upon a time maybe, but not anymore. I wear a coding cape and a coding hat. I get real comfy.
Have you reverse engineered other stuff other than just software and games, like mobile stuff or?
Do airplanes count?
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah. I can't elaborate further. I apologize.
Are you sure that's enough water?
No.
But you got a second one.
I'm really glad for that. Everyone's leaving, so that's a good sign. I've adequately like bored them to death. Any other questions? Okay, cool. Thank you.